I love like pimple popping, ear cleaning, cow hoofs that are infected, like all of that really pussy thing is so that's how I get to sleep. So, and it's such joy for me. I love gross
You
things.
have left me speechless.
I would love, I'm always, whenever I see people with like little growths and things, I'm like, if you ever go to the dermatologist, can I come with you? So that I think can I do it for you?
This is one of the reasons you're single. I think.
I know, but there's no one who wants to have their back pimples pop.
A special lady. She's the only one.
Salam and hello, everyone. My name is Lilly Piper, and thank you for tuning in today. So today's episode is actually called Salam and Ha Ha Hello, because we're talking about comedy with two of my favorite Kenyan people, not just even comedics, but just two of my favorite people who are also comedians and artists and creatives. And they are taking Nairobi by storm. And it's been beautiful to watch their artistry capture the attention and grow the audiences that they have across the city and across the region. So today on the show, we have Eric Lusavali and Shazz and Duritu, two just talented, multi-hyphenate individuals whom I am sure that you know from many, many places. Shazz is a model, a comedian, a host, a poet. There's really no way to capture all that she is. She's a proud auntie. She's just many beautiful things. And she's also been on the show before with her sister, Annie. They came on to the last iteration to talk about why Black sisterhood matters. So I'm so delighted that she's here today wearing her comedian hat. And joining her is also my friend, Eric Lusavali. We met on actually WhatsApp. I was buying some t-shirts many years ago. Yeah. And Eric has been a good friend for many, many years. And he is one of the founders of the Sticks and Stones Collective. It's a creative collective that does many things. They produce merchandise. They gather artists and help them grow their art. He's also the frontman for Punchline Comedy, which hopefully many of you have checked out and come to some of their live shows. They have an open mic. They are doing some really dynamic things. And in the middle of, of a stressful year and things going on, what better thing to do than to sit back and talk about comedy, why it matters. And before I turn it over to my guests, I have some jokes for you. So let's see how they land. Yes. Okay. These are some African jokes. Okay. So first one. No matter how bad you are not useless. You can still be used as a bad example.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
Thank
you. Okay.
This is more TED Talk than
this is more TED Talk. Exactly. Okay. So another one. A certain man worked in a factory for 20 years. Uh-huh. Let's say that factory is even here in our own beloved, Athi River area. Uh-huh. Every day after work, he would come out pushing a wheelbarrow full of straw. The security would search him thoroughly before going out, but finding nothing. On the day of his retirement, the security was curious about what he must have been smuggling out for 20 years. They were convinced that this man had been smuggling something, but wasn't sure what it was. When asked, the man said, wheelbarrows. Brilliant. Kind of funny and deep.
I think it's just ingenious.
Brilliant.
So welcome to Salam and Hello, Shazz and Eric, to talk about all things comedy. Karibu sana, guys.
Thank you.
So glad to have you here. Yeah. All right. So you guys, as I mentioned, are multi-creatives in many different places. But tell me why comedy, has been one of those mediums that you have really stuck to and are growing, and what brought you into that space? Shazz.
Which question are we answering?
What brought you into
comedy?
Comedy, yeah.
Actually, can I ask the Eric answer? I feel like I've given the answer before.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your story is. Can I just switch?
Let's talk about what's your origin story, Eric?
Yeah. My wife pushed me to comedy. She was just exhausted. At that time, she was just exhausted of hearing my jokes. She was just like, please stop. Tell these things to other people.
Is that true?
Well, kind of. I used to write lots of short stories. I was actually putting together an anthology of short stories. It was all satire. And unfortunately, what would happen, and I think I've told this story before on a few other podcasts and other platforms, is that what would happen is, unfortunately, the stories would get overtaken by life events. So, for instance, in 2013, I'd written this story about a fictional African country where they were holding elections, and it's called the election campaigns. And in this story, there was a woman who was running for office, and she was running on a platform of hard work. So her party symbol was the bee. And so during one of her rivals' campaigns, someone showed up at the campaign and drummed a beehive and it stung people. And so this woman was arraigned in court for biological warfare. Beautiful story, edited it, everything packed, all good. Editor looked at it, they read through it. That was part of the short story, like ready to go. So I'm writing more stories because it takes a while to put these stories together. And in 2017, there's an election in Kenya and it's contested at the Supreme Court. And people are protesting outside the Supreme Court. And what happens is that someone shows up with a beehive, drums it, and it stings the people who are
actually happens.
Yes. And I have like several instances whereby like basically art was basically inspiring.
Life.
But then I was like, I cannot produce this book now because people will be like, oh, he was inspired by this. I'm like, no, I wrote that years ago. So that book of anthology of short stories was just stuck somewhere. But my wife got extremely tired of me being very frustrated about this not coming to pass. And she was like, you need a platform that you can basically tell these ideas quickly or when they happen or before they happen, then you won't feel horrible, like I won't release this. And so 2017, I think we're in America, and she says, go on stage. And I do my very first comedy show at a place called, it's in DC. It was at Attack of the Comics with a gentleman known as Haywood Tanis Jr. Shout out to him. He's like big comedy supporter and founder in DC. And that's how I got into comedy.
That's it. How
Yeah.
about that? Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that life actually became the beehive. That's wild.
It's crazy, but also I'd thought of like starting stand-up comedy, a club in Kenya. This is 2013 still. I spoke to a guy called Eric Barry. He used to own a restaurant at the Ngong Racecourse. It was called the Karag. And I'd said, stand-up comedy
like a
is
pub,
big. Yes, it was an
Irish-
Irish pub. Yeah. Yeah. So I knew him from like Ireland, and he was like, we'll give you the platform, but you need to find comedians. And I couldn't find any. So I just shelved the idea. So until I came back is when now I got into comedy and I actually met Shazz at my very first open mic
No way.
in Nairobi at Gecko.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that night.
Yeah.
How about
Oh, wow.
that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to come to the
Yeah.
two of you connecting because that's I want to hear that story. But Shaz, how about you? Amongst the many different places where you create, why comedy? How'd you land there?
For 100%, comedy came to me in a very, let's say, interesting way. It actually, so the quickest way I can tell this story is, and my sister, some people know this, my sister and I were in Westgate when the terrorist attack happened. So on the 5th anniversary of that, we were invited to Hot 96 to do that commemorative thing, and Jeff Koinange and Hamo were like interviewing us and blah, blah, blah. And in the course of the interview, I didn't realize that I was being funny. It's just, it's a very difficult topic to, terrorism attack is horrible, but there was moments in there where in talking about it, I was just being myself and being funny about things. And my sister's she's not stern, but I'll say stern and,
It's a
a
somber.
therapist,
Yeah,
but she's
sure.
a therapist. She speaks like therapists do. And I was just being myself, and at the end of the show, one of the people who was like a producer there was one of the comics called Emmanuel Kisiangani, came to me after the show and goes, "You're very funny. You should try stand-up comedy." What he didn't know is, I don't need a lot in life to get me to do things. If I kind of like the idea of something,
Noted.
Yes,
it's true.
yes,
If I
yes.
kind of like it, you just have to say, and there I am.
I love
So
it.
that's exactly it. I came, I checked out the scene, and then I got into it. So
Wow.
that's the start.
Comedy from ashes. It's like that
Exactly.
verse beauty from ashes, but
Absolutely.
it's comedy from
Yeah.
ashes.
But I
love
love
it.
stand-up comedy. I've always loved it I've watched so many, like I'm enthralled by.
What do you love about it?
Comedians. My favorite comics are storytellers. I think maybe because I resonate with that as for myself. But I also, I love the I know you think you're just sitting here having, watching someone talk. I'm about to blow your mind. That for me is so wonderful.
Anticipation of the-
Yeah, I love
yeah.
knowing that you don't know you're about to love this. It's one of my favorite
Yeah,
things about doing
yeah,
comedy.
yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. And Eric, at what point between writing the short stories and life happening and all that, did you think you were actually funny enough to be a comic? At that DC event. Was it funny? Did people respond?
Oh, the very first time I went on stage, I killed it. It was amazing.
Really?
And
that does not happen for a lot of people.
That does not
I think.
happen. And that's the worst thing, because what
Yeah.
ends up happening is that you think you're extremely good. And even though you're just starting out, there's a lot to learn. So the first time I went, I killed it. I did that at the Attack of the Comics, was really good. And then I went to a place called Summers, still in DC, killed it. And then I went to another place, I can't remember the name. I think it was the Arlington Draft House. And then I killed it as well. But I get back here and I do my first room, and it was just very lukewarm. And so I started questioning myself, because then you're like, is it me? Is it the audience? What is
Yeah.
it? But then I also realized that it's because we do not context, just having the context, because I think a lot of having not a lot of that, let's say, growing up here, and just that element of being, let's say, a returnee, there's elements that you do not connect with people who are born here. So there's certain context you do
Exactly,
not get.
yeah.
So there's certain references that are not there. So it's something that Shaz actually told me after a while, said, the reason you do so well when you travel is because those are your people. That is your crowd.
Okay,
They
but
resonate
let's
with
break
you.
that. What does that mean by that's your people? Because you are Kenyan.
I am Kenyan, but
Yes,
having spent
okay.
so much time, or like basically abroad, it means
Okay.
that you have basically understood the mannerisms and cultures of those
Right.
particular people. So
Right.
sometimes you feel a bit disconnected, even from like home. You feel very disconnected from home because you've spent so much time away that there's certain clicks that do not just
Right.
land as easily as
Are there jokes that you found, I assume you've gone back and forth
Yeah.
since then,
Yeah.
that land both in the US and in Kenya with both audiences?
Funny,
and tell
funny,
us what.
Funny is funny. Funny is funny. And one of the things that then makes jokes work is that you need to find resonance. And the things like are very exclusive, whereby it's like, oh, these things are very Nairobi, or these things are very Kenyan, and they're things that are very American or British or South African. But then there are things that are global. So there are things that connect all of us.
Yeah.
So there are things, for example, when we talk about poverty, it's different types of poverty, but it's still poverty. There's still that fear of I might go to bed hungry. The things that we talk about, things like relationships. They might be
sure.
different. It might be even be people, same-sex couples. It might be mixed couples. It might be like all of those, but it's still relationships. So the very basis of funny are the same, because those are the things that connect all of us.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That human thread. Okay, so let's talk about those human threads when it comes to jokes. What makes a good joke? Because, there was a point in my life, it's been a while now, 5-6 years ago, where I was having like a pre-midlife crisis, because I feel like the midlife crisis should be right now, but I was just getting ahead of it. I was
ready.
planning for it.
Yeah.
So I was preparing, and I went through all these careers I could be. I was like, I could go into the Secret Service, be CIA, I could go back to teaching, and I was like, maybe I'm funny enough to be a stand-up comic. And I was with my husband and two of my best friends in the car, and all three of them said unanimously, "You're not funny enough to be a comic."
These are
Imagine.
haters. These are haters. I can tell you that. Like,
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
I hope you're
Wait,
hearing
hold
this.
on.
Ben,
Can we just
Regino,
address the
Henning.
fact that
Yes.
being a CIA agent was one of the things in her life. I'm like,
I-
hey, who are
listen,
you?
I support-
What do
I
you
support-
know?
I
How are we
support.
gliding past all of this?
I said it was a
CIA.
crisis. I said it was a crisis.
Here's the thing.
Do we know her?
I love people who have like madness, whereby they're like, I can be. I'm like, yes, you go, girl. So those are
just turned-
haters. There's
yeah.
still room for you to become
Thank
a
you.
startup
Be
and prove them
wary.
wrong. We're going to make you a startup comic today.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do
Yeah.
it. Okay, so let's work on a joke, or tell me what a good joke is. Where do we start?
Oh, I feel like that's a very different people attack it differently. I will always start from my own life, because I feel like for me, funny things happen to me all the time, and also tragedy for me is also hilarious. And I'm always telling myself, I can't wait until I can joke about this. And it's a thing, like, and the people who maybe bring that up for me it's like my family will do something. I go, oh my gosh, this is a bit, for sure. It's a bit for comedy. I can't wait till I'm not so emotional about it and I can share it on stage. So I feel like as a mom, as a wife, as a business lady, as a foreigner-ish living in
yeah,
Nairobi,
for sure.
you have so many things working for you, Lily.
Okay,
What
okay.
thing, what bugs you the most?
If I pick something, let me pick being a non-Kenyan in Kenya. because I have been here a long time, 12 years, but I
Yes.
don't speak
Oh,
Kiswahili.
I didn't realize that. Oh,
Dude,
why
Jay.
not?
I know. I have tried. I've hired tutors. I've taken lessons. I've hired 3 different tutors.
Listen, Lily, you cannot throw money at the problem.
At the problem,
I
yeah.
can't.
You
What
have
can
to-
I throw at it?
You need to throw your soul at it. That's how I basically got very good at Kiswahili. I basically immersed myself in it. I'd just be like at the workshop with
Yeah.
Lampard, and I'd be like,
Yeah.
you guys cannot speak English. You need to speak in
Yeah,
Kiswahili.
it's true.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm very afraid
So
of what that
immersion
means.
is the way I've learned most languages that I
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
When I was working in like Southern Africa, the only way I learned how to speak like Zulu and everything is I just
You learned how to
immersed.
speak Zulu?
Yes.
No,
it's
say
very
something.
it's very possible. Kumela, what else can I say? What do you want?
Say hi. How are you doing? What's going on?
Kumela is hi,
Yes,
how are
you
you
just
doing?
said jumbo.
Okay,
or
I know,
something.
right?
Jumbo.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
exactly.
just Jumbo.
Not impressed.
Tizoyami, my heart is for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
These are 2 cute phrases.
You
but
ordered
okay.
plantain.
Okay. So if I wanted to build a joke around being a non-Kiswahili
Yeah.
speaking Nairobi resident,
Yeah.
where do we start? Where is the joke material?
Maybe
in
where
that?
you've said something incorrect. That's a good, easy,
Okay,
low-hanging,
yes.
easy. Where you've said
Low-hanging,
something
easy
incorrect,
fruit,
thinking you're doing
yes,
really well,
yes.
and not. So my sister, one of my sisters traveled to Italy and speaks a little bit of Italian. And then we had guests come visit, and she was like, "Oh, I can teach you how to say, my name is Sharon, blah blah blah." And so she teaches me, and then I go to them, and I'm like, "Komiti Kama Sharon," and basically I was saying, "What is your name, Sharon?" And they're looking at me like, "Whether," and I'm like, "No, Komiti Kama Sharon," and they're looking at me like, "Is she crazy? Is she the slow sister?" You know. So
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
you have that
I
experience.
do have that experience a lot. Well, what happens to me a lot here is that people talk to me straight up in Kiswahili.
They
and then,
do.
And then I still have not mastered the phrase, "I'm so sorry, I don't speak Kiswahili." I have not mastered that phrase.
You don't do no habla español
Yeah.
version of
No,
Kiswahili.
exactly.
This is great.
Okay, maybe we should change this topic because now this is feeling a little hot.
No,
over
I'm
here.
just giving
I'm
you
just feeling a
shade.
little hot.
I think
so
we'll
easy.
get back to that. My approach to comedy is a bit different
Okay.
because so every Monday we like Punchline Comedy Club has a workshop on comedy basics at 2 grades.
Really?
Open
Anyone
to
can
everyone.
come?
Anyone can
Anyone.
come.
I'm
Anyone can come.
coming.
Please do. Please do.
Mondays you can
Mondays
come
from
to Punchline
6:30.
comedy.
Yes, Punchline
Okay.
Comedy Club has workshop classes for comedy basics at 2 grades. It's free. Everyone can come. We actually share a simple meal amongst all the comedians and just talk and then workshop the material that we've been working on.
Fantastic.
But I was teaching a class yesterday. I was facilitating the class, and we were looking at different types of comedians. So we have what we call the architect, and the architect is someone who is very intentional about comedy, and they look at structure, they look at certain ways of approaching it. And we have a coincidental comedian. A coincidental comedian is someone who has something happen to them, and then that's some news, and then it grows. But then what you have is you also have a hybrid. You have a hybrid of these two. So a hybrid of these
Yes,
two.
also me.
Yeah, I'm all the things. Every woman.
Every woman.
So one of the things that I would say is how does one make a joke? And I always believe that if you're charming enough and you're charismatic enough, anyone can be a comedian. What I'm thinking of doing in the next couple of years is basically be the K-pop of comedy. Just churn out comedians.
Yes.
Just churn out comedians. As long as you have the it factor, you can be a comedian. So the things
What's the
that
it factor?
the it factor is just
It's that
like
thing you can't
need-
touch, right?
you
Yeah,
need to be like you need to have like a pizzazz. You need to have charisma. You need to be able to command attention, and that's it. As long as you can be there, the rest of it can be told. Stage presence, writing jokes, and everything. You can have ghostwriters. I believe like we can do for comedy what hip hop has done for like Drake. Just have ghostwriters, have good producers, have ghostwriters.
Just put the
and
light skinned brother at the front.
Yes, just put the light skin bro at the front.
what you do.
That's it. But there's a structure that is there. They say it's called teaser. So it's target, it's emotion, it's not aggression. It's it's something like aggression. It's like what's it? Antagonism,
yeah.
and then there's surprise, and then there is exaggeration and realism. So those are the basic mechanics of comedy. So unfortunately, Shaz is looking at me like I'm crazy. My background is in science, so I basically look at everything like how do I break this down into all these elements. So when you look at things like, for example, you're looking at the target. Who's your target audience? What do they want to hear?
Yeah.
So if you go and tell jokes about your kids to teenagers, they're like,
You're not
she's
fun-
hating
yeah,
on us.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And then you look at the emotion. So if, for example, you want to create a joke, you go and speak to parents, because they look at that. You look at the emotion. Do they feel like they're losing their kids now that are growing up? Yeah. And then we look at aggression. What are the points of conflict that you have, antagonism between you and your kids? And then you look at surprise. What are the things that surprise you in that story? And then you look at the things that are exaggerated from that. And then finally, what are the things that are augured in realism? Anyone can be a comedian.
You know, I actually love that you said that, because you have a background in science. Shaz, you're also a math teacher. One of the things I didn't mention in your bio. So both of you have these technical backgrounds that are very kind of ordered, logical, step
But I
by
think
step.
he's definitely that person.
Yeah,
Like when I
but you
hear
bring
him
it-
talk about comedy, I'm like, are we talking about the same thing? Where our approach is so, I'm like, what is he?
Okay,
He
so
had
what's
a
your
5-point
approach?
plan.
Yeah, he has a very clear
I'm just
plan.
like, I'm gonna tell this story the best way I can. And I guess if you were to like break down things, you'd find
It's
those
all
things in
there,
what
yeah.
I do. But for me, I'm like, what's the best way I can tell? Because I'm usually telling stories about life things. What's the best way I can tell in a way that I enjoy it? I'm very selfish in my way of doing comedy.
Because
So
you
also-
are your own audience at
I
times.
really am. If I
Yeah.
don't find it funny, I'm not telling the joke, which is why it makes it very hard for me to take notes sometimes from people, because I'm like, no. I don't mind something not working out there.
Yeah.
I need to be able to, like, if I find it funny, that's all that matters to me, which is, you
And that's
know,
working for you, I guess, because
I
you're
love
out there
it.
making people laugh. So.
Yeah, I love.
I
For
think-
me, it
Yeah.
works.
I
for
think
me.
the one thing that, if you say what makes a good joke or what makes something funny, is if at all I'm able to relate to it. Just relatability is
Yeah.
the thing. As long as you can relate to something, because then there's that connection. And I've spoken to a lot of comedians and friends and everything, and comedy is a conversation. That's something that people do not understand.
Yeah.
Comedy is a conversation where I'm telling a story and you're responding, and your response is laughter, it's a gasp, it's shock, it's booing, it's all of that. That's the conversation. And one of the comedians we had over from Tanzania, Dio, said something very important. Is like, when you're on stage, you're not speaking to a crowd, you're speaking to individuals. So everyone always wants to feel as though you're telling this story to me. This is us. We are having that conversation.
Yeah.
And another comedian, Chris Mapane from South Africa, was visiting, and he said, you want to be the you that you are off stage, on stage. Because
Right.
I know a lot of comedians who are hilarious, especially who are starting out, and then they go on stage and they put on this character, and you're like, who is this person?
Right, right.
So
Just
I
be you all
feel
the time.
yes. So that resonance is very important. And then what Shaz is saying is just having fun on stage. Sometimes you can be at a show that is going horribly wrong, but you're having fun. So when you're having fun, the audience starts to have fun. But then when you're also super tense and everything, the audience is also apprehensive for you.
Yeah. So, you know, so much of what you said is that comedy, I think, is this medium that's very real. And you talked about it, and I watched that interview you did with Chris Mapane.
Yes, Chris Mapane, yeah.
And he talked about, or you talked about, how the fact that comedy is one of these genres where both the planning, execution, and final product is all delivered to the consumer at the same time.
Yes.
There's no going into the studio, redoing it, fine-tuning it. It is live right now, win or lose, you know, succeed or fail. It's happening right at the moment. That must give a little anxiety. So what is your prep like before a show?
A lot
I'm
of
curious.
anxiety. That's a little anxiety. A lot of anxiety.
Full-time
I feel like honestly, if you talk to like the partners or the family of the people who are comedians, I think we are. Let me speak for myself. I think a lot of us are miserable people to be around just before we get on stage. And I know I'm that person, you know, and I'm not really that person the rest of the time. But those, like, just before the gig, I'm like, trying to, you know, I'm almost upsetting myself, you know, before I get on. I'm getting better at that. So that's the thing. But I think the thing is, and that's why it's so hard to be like a critique for comedy if you're not a comedian yourself, because, and I remember Seinfeld actually said this, and he was like, I think he said he doesn't read the critic reviews and whatever, because he says your critiques are in the audience. It's instant. If they say if you say something and the audience laughs, you've won. That's
won.
it.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter
exactly.
what other people sit and, you know, pundit
Right.
about. That's it. That's
Yeah.
the thing. So for me, that's why I'm like, I need to have fun when I'm doing it.
Yeah.
If I'm going into a space and it's not fun, there's no joy in it, if I'm not on the poster, I probably won't get up on stage.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
you know, which is a thing. We argue about this all the time, because sometimes I'm like, no, and he's like, no, you need to get on. I don't know. But for me, also because it's not my mainstay, right? It's not the thing that I do full time for my career. So I can afford to just like take a step back. But I start from fun. If I'm writing a bit, if I'm remembering something and it's really funny to me, I know it's going to be awesome on stage, because it's just like,
Yeah.
I'm like fam, this is the thing, So that would be my biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to follow up on that though, Shaz, because like you said, this is not your only thing.
Yes.
So what does comedy offer you as a storyteller that other platforms don't? Especially when you talk about the fact that you were able to process or remember your Westgate experience through a comedic lens.
Yeah.
What does this, medium particularly give you?
Yeah. Well, I think especially with that example in mind, I remember. So one thing it does, it gives me somewhere to say things. I mean, I do because I write and I do other things. I have other avenues, but it gets me I get a chance to say these things out loud, usually like inappropriate or just things that people aren't expecting, but more often than not, things that people don't feel comfortable that they can say. And one of the things, it's a bit, actually, I need to just finish writing it. That was an experience during that. Imagine the terror of being in such a horrible, death-filled space, and one of the other thoughts, all the other thoughts are happening. I want to see my family again. This is horrible. How can we get out of here? Can I run? All of that stuff. But then also thinking, I remember the last. Wait, let me keep it clean. I remember the most recent lover that I'd had, and it was just such a.
Sure, yes,
it was such a shit experience. And I was like, Apana God, no. I'm getting out of here alive, and you better send a better. No, we are not going down with having a shit experience. You know what I mean? It was a thought.
That was a real
up there
thing.
with I need to run. Can I still run? That sort of thing. So that's the thing. It allows me to. Where else am I telling that story? In the way that only my voice can tell it. Because if you write some things, people read. They read it in their voice, But when I get to tell it, I tell it to you like now, and I can see like your people here going, oh my God, did she just say that? Yes, I just said that. It was a real thing. Yeah. So
I like your priorities, Shaz. I'm like,
my priorities.
Family, check.
Yes.
Oh, lover.
Yes.
It's to
I have
be
been making
continued.
up for a long time.
And like you said, that's relatable, right?
Yeah.
That is relatable.
Absolutely.
I have thought at times of duress, like when I've been somewhere, like, because after Westgate happened, I remember every sudden sound somewhere would make us all jump, right?
Yeah.
And every time I would hear a jump, I'd be like, oh my God, I have got to lose weight.
Yeah.
They're not going to take me out. When they look at all the bodies and they have to choose one, it's not going to be me.
What's the moving target?
That's
that was
a great
my
strategy.
priority,
That's a great strategy.
So,
wonderful.
Yeah. So
Weight loss.
It's relatable. Weight loss would have been my thing. Like,
Cannot relate.
Yeah. So I would have thought. But so let's talk a little bit about that idea of like the taboo comedy and how comedians do they relate to us because they're allowing us to talk about difficult topics in a way that we don't in polite company, right? There's this idea that at dinner topics you really can't talk about. Is it death, sex, and money? I think those are like the three top ones. Right?
Yeah, and faith.
And faith.
Yeah.
But comedians go hard on those topics. And how does comedy serve your audience when you want to wrestle with those topics? And if we think about the African context, elections, corruption, all those things give us plenty of material. How are you seeing comedians kind of wrestle with those topics?
I think for me, I've said this and I've said this before, and it's something that I borrowed from Ty and a few other people who have said this, is that we cannot be afraid of that thing that we laugh at. We cannot be afraid of that thing that we laugh at. And on most occasions, you find that when we laugh at something, it loses its power. So one of the reasons that whenever dictators come in power, the first things they want to silence are the arts is because the arts allow us to interrogate and laugh at power.
Absolutely.
So
That's beautiful.
That's something. You see that when Hitler came into power, what happened is that the sciences did extremely well. Why? Because they are defined by structure. So you have the Volkswagen that came out, you had Fanta Orange that came out, you had all these like trains and everything that came out. Amazing technological advancements. But that comes at the price of what? Of the voices that are dissenting. So when people ask me what is the role of comedy in addressing these issues, is for us to be able to feel like these things do not have power over us. That's the one thing that we must always understand.
Yeah.
So when we talk about sexuality, we talk about religion, we talk about race, we talk about corruption, politics, service delivery, those things do not have power over us because it's a way for us to, first of all, take away all the power they have. We laugh at them, all the power goes away, and then we can discuss them. A funny story is that one time there's a person who came for a show, and this person was extremely homophobic. And so during the show, there were all these jokes and jokes and jokes on same-sex couples and that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, this guy came up to me and he's like, that guy is actually my favorite comedian. And I said, that's very interesting because I know you and you're extremely homophobic, but I saw you laughing at jokes that basically put him in these situations and you in those situations because they were basically having banter and everything. And then he comes back and he says, I never looked at it that way. I never looked at it that way, whereby this particular comedian was able to allow me to, first of all, see the humanity in this situation before everything else is added. And so that is not a conversation that you could have with this individual in a room whereby we're debating, whereby it's like,
the defenses are up.
Yes,
Yeah.
but then comedy allows us to take away the power. And once we take away that power, it allows us then to have a very, let's say, genuine like discussion amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think that in particular right now we need to have more conversations about so many topics.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a time, Shaz, for you where you feel like talking about these topics in a comedic from the stage has left you feeling more vulnerable than powerful?
I'm getting comfortable with things that make me feel vulnerable is something that I kind of enjoy. I look for that in life. And I remember the first time, so when I started my page, the Queendom blog, and I was thinking, just sitting, unpacking, why is it that I feel like I have to do this thing? And it was because I didn't see enough fat Black women who were portrayed in certain ways, like in media. If I searched for something, I didn't see people who looked like me. And I realized I needed to do it myself. And I remember sitting there and unpacking it with one of my sisters and just going, I think I'm going to do a lingerie shoot. I'm going to do this. I'm going to put my body in this photo so that I can share it on my page. And her tell me, well, the thing you need to sit with is, if you might be ridiculed for it. Are you okay with that? It might affect if you're going to have a boyfriend later or whatever, because people will judge you from that. And so there was some sort of personal cost to me. But I remember, and maybe that's the thing that I use as my guide, is if I still feel that I have to do this thing, even knowing that it might not go well for me, on the face of it, then I feel like then I have to do the thing.
Yeah.
And that for me, I guess, is the motivation. So for me, I find that if I feel that there's something that I need to talk about, and one of the things, I'll talk about everything, body image, sex. I actually really enjoy talking about uncomfortable things. And especially if I can make you laugh while we're doing it, then, that's just the best thing to me. Because I feel we are going through them. People are thinking things, even just the fact that I say I'm a fat Black woman, that it'll make some people uncomfortable, make some people, just question so many things about them. I don't mind that discomfort. And then I get to give you my perspective on the experience of being me, in this body. And it's so I haven't, even when I've kind of gone, I don't know if I should say it, I've always been glad that I've said it, or I've done the thing 100%. Never thought, I need to tone down on this, fat comedy or whatever it is, relationships, I'm always like, no. Even if it is, let's do the thing anyway.
Yeah.
It has to be done.
So, Eric, with Punchline Comedy,
Yes.
and Shaz, you've hosted a lot of shows where you're seeing comics and you've been also in the audience. Has there ever been a time where either of you felt like a joke went too far or did not, wasn't
All
funny
the time.
in the way about these topics?
All the time, all the time. And I think that is the thing with comedy, is that you need to be able to go to that level for you to be able to break the threshold. And the thing is as well, is that comedy is extremely subjective. Comedy is extremely subjective. So there's something that you'll say to one crowd and they will not be on board. And then you say it to another crowd and everyone is gone.
Yeah, okay, so let me pause you there because I'd also noticed in just consuming your material, your audiences are on the younger side, I would say a little bit.
Yeah.
So have you been able to make like older people laugh? Because I think about them as the ones needing the jokes around sex and corruption.
Amazingly, yes. I have been able to make. So a while ago, I was actually asked to MC an event that had all these stuffy government officials, and we're talking about people who are like in their 40s and 50s and 60s, and all these people in their suits and everything. And the material that I'd prepared, I was like, I'm going to do my material. I'm probably going to get cancelled and that sort of thing. And
They don't cancel you. That generation doesn't
Yeah.
cancel. They fire you.
They fi-
You don't
they
get
fire
paid.
you.
And the funny thing is, I had this gentleman who's basically sitting on the board of directors for several banks, and he was just howling. He was just howling. At a certain point, I knew it. And this was a really, like, you know my manpower joke? Yes.
Oh, just tell it now. You're already here.
It's a very
Don't
long
be.
bit.
It's a very
Prepare
long bit,
yourself.
but
Okay.
this joke stems from when my friend and I were in China, and we walk into this mall, and I get mistaken for this guy who had ordered for sexual performance enhancing drugs the previous day. So I made it into a bit. It's crazy, but I was doing that bit, and this guy was just howling. At a certain point, he basically just spewed water across the table to his colleague. And the person who's sitting on the other side is basically the chairperson of the central bank.
Wow.
He basically spews water onto the chairperson of the central bank at that particular time. And the chairperson of the central bank starts laughing at them. And then everyone it just got to a point whereby the MC thought it was getting out of hand, and they took me off stage.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh.
Because it just got a bit crazy.
You're having too much fun at this government function.
Yeah, and so at a certain point, this guy came back and said, this you cannot speak about this. And I was like, these people were laughing at this. So comedy transcends those generations. We do have people who come to our shows when we're doing the Nairobi Street Kitchen, and this is always hilarious. There's a mother and son who'd come for the event.
Yeah.
And you're just like, we are about to ruin your lives.
It's going to be a very quiet ride home.
Yes. And yeah,
Sure.
so
Oprah
it
used to always
transcends.
Oprah used to always say she wanted to be on the car ride home.
Yeah,
with
I
the
would
people.
say
Yes.
same.
Yes.
It transcends, like, so the funny thing with comedy is that it transcends all ages. And it's just about, if you come to a comedy show, and I always tell this to people, if you come to a comedy show, come with an open mind. Just come with an open mind, because if you come with reservations, if you come with like your own ideas, you'll not have a good time. But if you just come to a comedy show and you're like, I'm here to have a good time. I do not know what's happening, but I'm here to have. It's the same as when you go on a carnival ride. The joy is in the experience.
Yeah,
So yeah,
okay.
so I'd say we do transcend a lot of lines. We do have comedians who bring their parents. Like KK has brought his
I'm
his
always
parents.
apologizing.
Yes.
I'm like, hi.
Like,
hi,
I'm
Dad.
sorry.
Hi, Mom.
Yes.
Mother Nyagosho.
I'm taking this note.
Hi. You know.
Do you remember when we
making
did
myself
the Zen Garden event?
Yeah.
And
no.
it was for the entrepreneurs.
yes.
And it was this old, like, it was just old, moneyed people. And it's just, you're like, I'm here to do a job. That's it. So yeah.
I have to say, for me though, one of the things that for myself, and I can't put it on other comics, is I think there's a fine line between being funny and being mean.
Yep.
And that can be translated differently for different people. So, what might be mean to someone might be funny to someone else. So I'm the gauge for that myself. And I try to, so I even the word, I like to say it so much because I want people to be comfortable, is fat. And I always, like the younger comics, I would always talk to them. They're like, oh, I really like da. And I always tell them, if you're going to tell a fat joke, make it a good one.
Yep.
It has to be better than what I would do because I tell really good fat jokes, So, and the thing is, when it comes out as mean, I feel like there's some things that are intangible. I feel like the audience can feel that vibe as well. I've seen someone who came up after me and did a fat joke, and that thing really tanked.
Yeah.
And I actually felt bad for him. I was like, will you pull it? I'm like, my friend, they love me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it best be amazing because the vibe of the audience was just like, oh no, that's a mean thing to say.
Yeah.
And it's just, maybe in another audience it would have worked, but I was like, then make it really good.
I think that's
I don't mind
so
it, but make it
important,
good.
right? Because we can all recall those playground bullies, right?
Yeah.
Where it kind of started off funny, or we went back and forth jokes, and then at some
Yeah.
point it turned mean.
Yeah.
And everybody walks away silent.
Yeah.
Because even you mentioned that
Yeah.
joke, the homophobic jokes.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, when you started to tell that story, I'm like, well, who was delivering the joke?
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
main thing. Like,
Yeah.
who was the conduit
Yeah.
for that joke? Was that
Absolutely.
person themselves gay? Was that person?
But that's why
And they don't necessarily have to be, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that's very important as well in comedy is we always say, you do not punch down.
Yeah.
You always punch up.
Yeah.
And so when comedians are talking about certain things, one of the elements that you must always be aware of is that we do not attack people, we attack issues. That's extremely important. And once you start thinking in that context, then it allows you to be able to be very objective in the way that you address an element. And one thing that audiences do not understand is that when people are writing jokes, the amount of thought that goes into it, because you put yourselves in that person's shoes and you put yourself on the other side and then you put yourself. So I have written jokes that I feel very sad about because I've looked at all angles and I realized that this is I have a horrible joke. I have a horrible joke about extrajudicial killings. And it does extremely well, but it's horrible in that the way I looked at it and I researched and I looked at it, but I was like, we must be able to talk about this. So it's a horrible joke. The joke
You're not going to
is,
tell it.
I will tell it.
Okay.
The joke is like, this was like, I think last year, and I was like, they just found 27 bodies in River Yala. And that's really sad news. But the saddest thing about that whole thing is that the other rivers are body shaming River Yala. And they're like, what's your body count? And it's like, it's 27, but 2 of them were my boyfriend. Like, it doesn't count. So it's a horrible joke.
We're not laughing at that.
But
Eric. We refuse.
at the same time, it's a way for us to be able to address what is happening. Because the only other way that we're looking at it is we're seeing all these news articles that are coming up. We're seeing all these elements that are coming up. And so when I make that joke, am I making fun of extrajudicial killings? No. When I make that joke, I'm bringing light to the fact that there are people who are dying out there. There are things that the police are doing that are not right. But if I go on stage and I start talking about that, then I stop being a comedian. I start being an activist on a
TED
different...
Talk.
Yeah, it's a TED Talk. It's a different platform. So the idea is you attack issues. You do not attack people.
Thank you for that. That's, I think, so clear. I love that. I'm going to think about that after even we wrap today, even as a podcaster. Like when I'm talking about things, what am I focusing on, an issue or person? I think that's a really important distinction. Shaz, you wanted to jump in and add to that as well.
I forgot that point. But the other thing that I think about when I think of those sort of topics is that's why I like that when we have new faces and new bodies and new sexuality, people who come up who identify as those things, because it's the best thing with that is that it allows us to hear it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
If we're used to joking about the thing, if we're always making fun of fat people and the fat comic comes in and makes the joke, or a black woman or whatever it is, lesbian, whatever package that you fit into, when you're the person telling the joke, it completely changes the conversation in the room. It changes people's opinion, because now they're like, oh, wait, hold on. Maybe this is funny. Maybe now this is even funnier, you know? And that's why I'm like, I can't wait. I want, we want other, what's the proper way of saying other abled?
Differently
Do we say
able.
disabled? We don't say disabled.
Well, actually, I talked to a disability activist,
Yeah.
and she said that is what we have. We have a disability.
Okay.
Yes.
So she
Actually,
in particular was.
I wish that
okay with
person
that.
was a comic, because
Yeah,
I'd like for
yeah.
someone to address how we name them, and
Yes.
Yeah.
and if you want to be called disabled, then that's great. How can we put that in comedy? That's why I'm like, I do like being called curvy and all of those other yummy things, but I also want to be called fat, and I want it to be okay. So then we don't have to sit here and play that correcting game about what's PC, what's not PC.
Yeah.
I'm tired of that thing.
Yeah.
And
Let's
it's
just do the
also
thing.
funny that you say that, because the people who get most offended are the people who are the farthest removed from
Very
a
true.
particular topic. I think 3 years ago, there's a gentleman who came and he sat in the front row, and he was disabled. He lost the use of his legs. And the whole night I was hosting, I just roasted him. I was just going in on him. And I was just like, oh, like, just because your 2 legs don't work, it doesn't mean the other one does. Like, I just went in on him, just hard.
Like third leg.
Yes. And
Yo.
so afterwards, this white lady comes up to me and is like, how could you do that? And how could you say this? And this guy hobbles over and is like, that is the most hilarious night of my life. And he turns to me and he was like, that's the first time since I lost my legs that someone actually treated me like a human being.
Exactly.
And this white lady was
Yeah.
just standing there
Yeah.
looking aghast. And it's like, oh, you... And the guy turns to her and says, who are you to speak on my behalf?
Yeah. The thing is that there's a place for activism. There's
Yes.
a place for people who stand up for you if
Yeah.
you're like a voiceless person in that situation. But I feel like it's a fine line as well,
Yeah.
and I think it's great when you have a conversation with the people who you're defending, so that you make sure you're giving them the representation they want, or you might find that they don't want it. You know,
Yes.
you may have to look for a new cause if
Yeah.
you're going to be an
Yeah.
activist for it. But I would love, my thing is opposite. I'm like, can we bring that? Are they interested in comedy? Can we bring them on stage? That would be wonderful, because then that takes that away.
Yeah.
You know, bring the
Yeah.
stutterer,
Yeah.
bring the blind person,
Yeah.
bring, you know, all of that stuff. And then also it allows you to talk about, a life experience that I'm currently going through is losing my parents, and talking about, oh my God, I'm going to cry.
Take your time. Take your time.
Talking about grief on stage, you know, it's tricky. How do you talk about sad things, you know, in a comedy setting? But here's the thing, something about death and loss is, it's not funny, but funny things happen. That's my experience of it, is that, you know, in the midst of all this sadness, I'll see something hilarious and I'll be like, oh no, we're at the funeral. This is so funny. I'm going to have to put this in my comedy, you know, and that actually happened.
Shazz.
You know, I remember my mom's funeral, and I talk about this actually on stage, and, you know, like literally in the funeral, some guy, because it's a Shag's wedding, we know Shag's weddings, you know. So already it's like celebrity. And I'm like, no, it's not the funeral, guys. This is very serious. And literally this kid was brought up to like launch his album. They were like, you guys, we have 500 people. We're launching an album.
That's
And I'm sitting there like upset. And my sister's like, I hope you're recording this. And I'm like, yeah, we need to like go complain to the Presbyterian church, whatever. They're like, no, content. It's content. And I'm like, what? You guys, this is mom's funeral. You know, it was a true story though.
Yeah.
See?
Shaz, what's the name of this album? I think it's a banger.
I'm selling CDs, you guys. 2 for 1.
It's a banger, this one.
I decided to just make money from the situation. Let's help kids in the countryside.
Yeah.
You know, guys. But you know, this happened. We had a mad, as we were leaving my dad passed away recently, and as we were leaving the funeral home, there was a madman who was naked, doing naked things that madmen do. I cannot wait to tell that story. Please come to the show, because I'm like, Dad, I mean, come on, guys. Are we never going to have a normal funeral? I guess not, you know. I'm not looking for it. It's happening.
It's happening.
You know?
Yeah.
So
I also feel as a comedian, you lost an opportunity to just do a tight 5, like during the like stage time is important.
yo,
Shaz. Like
listen,
you can,
I should have just gotten up on stage.
yeah. Like you like. But I'm hoping like that guy's CDs go viral. Like if you can't, your career can't take off when someone is going down.
It's true.
That's
It's true.
that's
Salam and
the sad thing.
hello. We'll push it out there as best we can as a
Thanks.
tribute to
Link
your
in
mom
bio.
and dad.
Yeah.
In honor of your brilliant parents. Oh, thank you for sharing that, though, Shaz. Because I think, you know, comedy is it's a tool for healing. It's a tool for understanding and navigating hard conversations. It is this really uniquely wielding tool. I mean, I'm thinking about just going back to my own kids. If I could have found jokes in a way to like wrestle with the hard topics with my kids, my parenting would have been a bit more successful. You know what I mean? Like comedy does offer us something that nothing else really does. And yeah, I think you both are offering Nairobi and audiences ways to think about and dive deep into issues that they're facing every day, which
And
is really important.
it's very, one thing that a lot of audiences do not understand is comedy is very cathartic. Like for comedians, we go on stage and we speak about things that basically affect us every single day. And you come off stage and you feel like a burden has just been shared and released. So it's
I've
extremely
read
cathartic.
that
Yes.
also a lot of comedians have like troubled pasts
Yes.
or
Yes.
dealing with heavy things
Yeah.
themselves. I'm not saying that either of you are or have, but I'm just saying that they do use it as a form of their own therapy.
There's no comedian who doesn't have trauma.
Who does not
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Guaranteed.
Well, there's no
this-
human practically that doesn't have some level of trauma.
It comes from like very dark, and what Shaz is saying is extremely important, because like I don't usually deal with like emotions very well, but one of the things that I made a conscious effort to do is basically talk about my parents, like, and me losing them and them being away, and I've written like a set about that, and it's always extremely funny. And people come up and say, but your parents are still alive. I'm like, no, they're not, but
I didn't know that,
it's
Eric. I'm sorry.
it's fine. It's like there's something cathartic about being able to deal with that and you process it. Because for me, February is usually a very difficult month. But then this year it was much lighter because I was able to process that. So it is very cathartic. Most people don't understand that or know that, but it is extremely cathartic. Yeah.
Laughter is medicine for sure. I know I've taken a lot of your time already, but I have a few kind of rapid fire questions
go.
I wanted to run with you guys. Okay. So you can just answer whomever, and then we just take it from there and we'll just go quick. Okay. Funniest thing about being in your 30s.
Who said I'm 30?
Girl, look good though. You look good.
Don't crack,
20s,
though.
20s. Okay, Shaz, you go first. What's the funniest thing about being the age you are right now?
Let me clean that up.
Okay, we'll go back to Shaz.
I can say what really, really, as you get older, you get bolder in what you, So it's like,
So the funniest thing
Yeah.
is that you can be as funny as you want. Eric?
It's just realizing you haven't figured it out. Is now you're like, oh, taxes. I should pay those. Oh wow. Yeah.
Okay, funniest thing you've seen in Nairobi?
it's funniest and it's one of my favorite things. I love street preachers because I work in construction. I love construction preachers. There's that thing of someone will just put down their tools and go into preach mode, and other construction workers' reaction to it. It's please spend your time in a construction site and watch that. That's amazing. It's it's everything you need.
Street corns. Street corns are the best. 3-card mode. Like Nairobi is just amazing because you're seeing idiots in the making. It's just like this is I've seen one guy who like did the street corn, and then the guy was so upset he lost his money. He went and found 40 guys and came back with 4-0. And I was like, where do you find 40 people? I don't know 40 people. And they came because the prizes were like you would win generators and everything. They took that and they tossed it into the river. And usually the corn guy has like muscle. They also tossed the muscle into the Nairobi River.
gosh.
It was hilarious. It was just beautiful.
Okay, Nairobi, just providing us jokes
Yeah.
for free. Funniest thing about Kenyan culture?
I think I'll say this with how like fake we are. Whatever it is, whether it's like fake humble or it's the funniest thing to sit back and watch and go but also to go I'm one of them. I also do that thing. Okay, sawa.
This is who I am.
Sawa, yeah.
It's people thinking that the cultural quirks are not quirks. So we think Kenyans don't have an accent.
As we don't.
Yes, you see, Kenyans don't have an accent. They think certain things are like pretty normal, and then you're like, that is not normal. This is like it's very like out there.
Okay, what is the funniest thing that ever happened to you in your real life? Which we've already talked about a bit, but the funniest thing that ever happened to you in your real life.
I think it's the getting accosted by Chinese people in a Chinese mall trying to say that I ordered sexual performance enhancement drugs when I clearly did not. I did
Maybe
take
he
those
knew
drugs.
something.
I did take those drugs home.
Maybe
and-
wifey had come in earlier.
Rachel, let us know.
I'd not met Rachel yet, but let's just say I did come back with a lot of manpower. That's just it's a good thing.
Okay, Shaz. You've mentioned a couple of funny things,
yeah.
I have to say already. But
All the time. Just every date, fam. Can I just date one normal person?
one normal, non-funny
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
Okay, guys, we'll put how to reach Shaz in the show notes. Eric, funniest person in your life that is not a comic.
I want to say my wife, but then that's giving her too much credit. I'd never live that down. So, Selector OCS, our DJ, OCS is the funniest. Like, he has an amazing laugh, but he also just has all these stories that he doesn't think are funny. But I'm just like, you need to get on stage at some point. And he's just like, no, I'm good behind the decks. He has the most hilarious story. He has a story about a friend of his who got like, and it is just hilarious because the person who this person put the thing on their and then made him.
Okay. Thank you for that example.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Shaz, who is the funniest person in your life that is not a comic? That is also not DJ Selector.
That is not.
It's also not that person.
It's always family for me. My family is hilarious.
I ruined this podcast. I'm sorry.
You ruined it.
We'll edit
It's okay.
it.
Thankfully, Shaz is here to save it.
God, I'm so sorry.
And then I don't. I think my grandma right now is one of the funniest people. Like every time we go visit her, my mom's mom, she has so much shade, and she's. I'm just like, yo, when can we make a series about her life? She's hilarious and petty AF.
Listen, grandmas are taking off on TikTok. Apparently, this younger generation wants connection with grandmas. So you might have a thing.
If
on
I can
your
get her
hands.
to just agree to be on camera.
Yeah.
It's because once you're old, you have nothing to lose. You're just like, I'm done.
Yeah. Okay.
Hilarious.
And next one, funniest comic that we all need to know that we don't know yet.
In Kenya or across the world?
Anywhere. Put us on to somebody.
Can I say two?
Sure.
So Marcus Douglas.
Okay.
Marcus Douglas is in the Nairobi comedy scene. Hilarious kid. And there's a new girl. Her name is Shiro Mwangi. This girl just transcends all levels of funny for everyone. Amazing.
Okay, we'll try and find them and put them in the show notes too. Okay, Shaz, what about you?
I'm trying to. There's so many. Honestly, that's why I go for comedy shows just to watch the comedy as well. Sometimes not to get up on stage because I'm just like, these people are hilarious. Maybe there's so many. I'd say there's a newish Ruth, local girl, really funny, and a surprise as well. From she's the perfect. Like who she is when you see her and when you hear her speak are two different people.
The audio does
and
not
it's
match
hilarious.
the video.
It does not. So I love seeing people go, what did she say? That's amazing.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of another. I mean, Marcus for me is an example of someone who's great, who's done the. Because I'm not that sort of person. I'm not a very technical person, but someone who's worked with the technical person and become an amazing comic is Mark. I agree with Marcus Douglas. Ruthie, I'm just gonna make it all about you because there's so many. And
all right. Yeah. So before we let you go, what's one piece of advice that you might have for up and coming comedians? I love what you said earlier. Anyone can be a comedian. Yeah. In addition to coming out on Monday nights to Punchline Comedy's creative kind of workshops, what's one piece of advice you might have?
I'd say, do you want to go first?
No, please go ahead.
I think the thing about being a comic is, I'd say just do it. It really is the Nike thing, but it's unfortunately, there's no way to know if you are a good comic, if you enjoy it, blah, 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 until you do it. There's no other way. And that's like, I think the workshops are great. All of that stuff is great, but there's no other way to know than to do it. So just do it. Don't wait for people to give you permission. I think that in life generally. But I think, don't wait for someone to be like, Shaz, X, you're a good comic. You can give yourself the permission you need and then do the thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think for me, the advice is a lot of times we do not appreciate talent enough because we think if you're talented, it's not equated to hard work. And you need to work just as hard on talent for it to work. So when you think about the people who've made it in the arts, they basically work extremely hard. So any young comedian who's out there, the thing is you may be talented, but that talent needs hard work. And that's why we do not put value on the creatives, because we do not feel like there's hard work behind it. So when you tell people, oh, I'm a physicist, they're like, oh, you went to school for years and years and you put in the work. Yeah. But when you tell people I'm a singer, they think, oh, God gave you that, so you're fine. So there's no value attached to it. So once creatives, artists work hard and are able to show, and this notion, and maybe this is very important, this notion that we should make the arts look easy should stop. People need to understand and see the hard work that goes behind it, but because then we attach value to it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I can only plus one on that. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. So where can people find your work and follow you, engage with you? Shaz, where can people find your work?
I'm only on Instagram as queendom.blog and then on the Punchline, on other comedy pages, but that's where you'd find me.
Wait, you made me get a TikTok and you're not on TikTok?
I am, but I stalk. TikTok is my...
She's one of those creepy stalkers.
Non-guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
I think Punchline Comedy Club, punchlinecomedy.club is the website where you can find lots of great comedians. For me, it's Easy Sunday, like the ice cream Sunday. So it's Easy Sunday. But then it's just boring woodworking things and my geese and cooking. And I'm not very intriguing in my Instagram, but you can find me there. My geese are very intriguing. They do great things.
But the Punchline Comedy Club website is pretty much the hub, right?
Yes,
for your
yes.
events.
It has all the events. It has, and our Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel. If you like stand-up comedy, just go on our YouTube channel. We have entire shows. We have sketches. We have skits behind the scenes, merch, product, all of that. So our website and our Instagram and YouTube are all just Punchline Comedy Club Nairobi everywhere.
And you've got a big event coming up.
We have a big event coming up. It's the 6th and 7th of May. It's the biggest event in our calendar. It's called the Distant Relatives. Distant Relatives is really about bringing comedians from across the world, because I believe that comedy brings us all together as a family. So 6th and 7th of May, Distant Relatives, we have comedians coming in from South Africa, from the US, from Tanzania, and also from here. So it's going to be really, really big. I'm very excited for that. I wish I was performing. Shazz is performing, but I wish I was performing on that. So
Looking for,
yeah.
you can get. We'll make sure we link that in the show notes. So
Yes.
people can buy tickets.
Yes.
Come see.
Yeah, come
both
see,
of
come
you
see comedy.
and
It's
come
2 days.
together.
It's 2 days of the very best comedy. The last year we did it, we just brought the whole museum like held down, and this year it's going to be even better. We have some people who are coming back. Dumiso Lindy is coming back, and people
So
love him.
excited.
So
Fantastic.
yes.
Fantastic. So we always ask our guests before we let them go 2 of our favorite questions around here. Eric, what's your favorite drink?
Tea. I like a nice English tea.
Boring. This is so surprising.
Yes, I like a nice English tea. It's very like
The colonizers.
that's
drink.
the thing. Yeah,
All right,
an Earl
okay.
Grey.
Was
for
that
me,
funny? Thank you.
An Earl Grey for me is the tea is one of the things that basically the English took from the Chinese, and I'm like, yeah, okay, fine, take that.
Wasn't it Indians?
No,
Oh my God.
it comes from the word cha, which is tea. That's why you call it chai. It's basically from Chinese. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Shaz, you?
I'm so upset to be answering this after here because I feel for me it's also tea, but I like the Kenyan tea. How we
Thank you.
make
At least
it.
you made it Kenyan
So
tea.
Kenyan tea. I like
So which is
the-
milk.
Yeah, milk.
like
But
milk.
enough tea leaves, like love, patience, all of that stuff that goes into the tea.
Love
so
and
yeah, it
patience.
really,
With
really is.
spice.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Okay.
Cardamom.
All right.
Or how the Indians make it. I was in India and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Okay.
So
I should send you a video
They
of
know
like a
tea.
very weird tea person on the street. It's
I
hilarious.
probably follow them. I watch it like, oh, I love that stuff.
And lastly,
Yes.
we try and focus on stories of joy and justice at this show. So, Eric, what is bringing you joy today?
A lot of stuff is bringing me joy, but one of the things I'd say is I don't know what I'd do without my wife. Like she's just that is the most stable thing in my life. That's the most joyous thing in my life. That's just the most beautiful thing that I have in my, like everything else can be falling apart and I just come home and she's snoring and I'm like, okay, fine, this is, and I hate people who snore and I'm just like, this is good. So yeah.
Well, I guess that's great. I don't even know how to respond.
I want to know how this plays out because in one way, there's flowers being given.
Right. Another
I'm
hand.
like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Why'd you,
No,
but
she knows. She's
listen,
like, she
Rach,
knows. Like
if it
it's-
works for you, good for you, babe.
No,
But,
it's the fact that
stirring up for yourself
the thing.
treasures
It's the
in
thing that
the
basically.
bedroom.
I one of the things I say before is like I would never marry a person who snores, and this woman I'm like I would not be with anyone else.
Insert foot in mouth.
Yeah. No.
Just saying.
Okay.
Foot and mouth disease. Please go ahead, Shaz.
That's hilarious. Let me just share like a silly one because that's the one I really enjoy. I love gross things, so I found a rabbit hole in social media, TikTok, and all of that, where I love like pimple popping,
Oh,
ear
God, yes.
cleaning, cow hoofs that are infected, like all of that really pussy thing. It's so That's how I get to sleep. So and it's such joy for me. I love gross
You
things.
have left me speechless.
I would love. I'm always whenever I see people with like little growths and things, I'm like, if you ever go to the dermatologist, can I come with you so that I
Shaz,
can?
I think this
or
is-
can I do it for you?
This is one of the reasons you're single. I think.
I know, but there's no one who wants to have their back pimples popped. Or am I now talking to a 21-year-old demographic? They're mature people.
Well,
with
listen,
adult
I
acne.
mean, I was going to ask people to like rate and review our show, but I
Yeah.
think I'll just ask them instead. If you want to have your back pimples
I would-
popped,
I
your
love-
earwax examined,
I love that.
please let Selam and Hello know, and we will hook you up with Shaz directly, because that might be the match.
It's
That might have been
really
what
a
this
source
show
of
is really
joy.
about.
It's really a source of
Oh my
joy.
gosh, 52 episodes. Even I've never felt so speechless as I was after that response. But thank you for being here. Thank you for lighting up our lives with your laughter and your good jokes. I know it costs you something to get up there and make these jokes, both time and effort to perfecting your craft, and also the personal, vulnerability that it takes. So thank you both. I'm really
And
grateful
madness,
for both
it's
of you.
a bit
And a
of
bit of madness,
madness.
a bit of
Yes,
madness.
yes.
Which the world needs. Somebody said, the people don't need more people who are like following their passion. They need more people who will set themselves on fire
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
let us be warmed by their
Oh yeah, that
fire.
sounds-
So
that
that's you
sounds good,
guys.
yeah.
You've set
That's
yourself on
wonderful. I
fire,
love
so
that.
we can
Yeah.
just
That's
warm
deep.
ourselves.
I love like pimple
Feel
popping,
that.
ear
Oh,
cleaning, cow
Thank you,
hoofs
Eric and
that are
Shazz.
infected,
And,
like all of that.
listeners,
really
let us
pussy
know what you thought
thing
about the
is
show,
so
but
wonderful.
more
That's how
importantly,
I get to sleep.
subscribe and follow.
and
That's
it's
really
such
what will
joy
help
for
us
me.
the most.
I love
We would
growth.
love
You
to
have
hear
left
from
me
you. We'd love to
speechless.
have
I would
your
love.
support.
I'm always
We will
whenever I
make
see
all
people with
the
like little
ways
growths
that
and
you
things,
can
I'm like,
follow
if you
Shazz
ever
and
go
Eric,
to
how you can
Coachella,
just check out Punchline Comedy.
So
in the
I
show
think
notes.
this
And
is-
can I do it
definitely
for
come
you?
out
This is one of the
on
reasons you're
Shazz
single. I
and
think.
I know, but there's no one who wants to have their back pimples pop. Or am I not talking?
So thanks for listening and
A
enjoy the
special
week.
lady. She's the only one.
Salam and hello, everyone. My name is Lilly Piper, and thank you for tuning in today. So today's episode is actually called Salam and hello because we're talking